So we are recording. Tasha, welcome. We're glad you're with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us who you are and how you came to be doing what you're doing, and
Yeah.
any dirt you have on Faith Gay that you want to share.
Yeah, so my name's Tasha Gottschalk-Fielding. I'm an Immigrant Justice Legal Corps Fellow, and I'm currently working with the Cornell Farmworker Legal Assistance Clinic at our office in Cooperstown, New York. And we're in the Cooperstown area because of a partnership with First Presbyterian and First Baptist churches in Cooperstown, New York. And so my office is based in First Baptist Church right now. And yeah, I've prepared some slides to talk a little bit about our project, if that would be helpful. Right. Is everyone able to see the slides? Great. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm affiliated with the Cornell Farmworker Legal Assistance Clinic. So I just wanted to give a quick overview about our clinical program and the kinds of work we do. So the Farmworker Legal Assistance Clinic, or FLAC, is our abbreviation, started at Cornell Law School in Ithaca in 2015. And we are one of the only clinics in the country at a law school that focuses on rural immigration needs. So there are a lot of immigration legal clinics at different law schools across the country, but most of them focus more on needs in urban areas. So our focus has always been on working with rural populations to address immigration needs. Right now, the current priority of our clinic is special immigrant juvenile visas, and I'll talk more in a minute about what that means. But we also work on a range of other case types, including U visas, T visas, asylum, work authorization, and removal defense. And as you can see from the map, our main clinic office is located in Ithaca at the law school. And then we recently opened our Mohawk Valley office, which is located in Cooperstown, New York. And so as I was mentioning, our office in Cooperstown was started through a partnership with First Baptist and First Presbyterian churches in Cooperstown. Members of these churches had reached out to the clinic a few years ago to talk about wanting to start an immigration assistance project focused in Cooperstown area and the surrounding counties. And this expands the reach of our clinic into the Mohawk Valley region, which was an area we had not been in before. Previously, we'd been focusing on counties in central New York and western New York. So this has allowed us to reach into the Mohawk Valley region, and which comprises a lot of counties that have been underserved previously and for immigrant legal representation. And I have the map here that shows the counties in blue are the counties that we have had or currently have cases in for the clinics. You can see their number now in the eastern part of the state. And just to define Mohawk Valley region, we're counting that as Otsego County and then all the counties that touch it. So the 8 counties in that area. It's the focus of our office. And I started at the clinic as a legal fellow last year through a partnership with Immigrant Justice Corps, which places legal fellows at different immigrant legal organizations across the country. So as I mentioned, our clinic focuses primarily on working with the farm worker population. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of background about farm workers and why those are a population that we're particularly focusing on serving with our clinic. So about half of the world's workers are farm workers, and farm work comprises about 70% of the world's child labor. In general, farm workers tend to be have high concentrations of indigenous people, migrants, elders, children, and prisoners of war across the countries. In the US specifically, about 78% of the agricultural workforce are immigrants, and about 53% are undocumented. It's hard to get a a precise number on that due to that being largely under the radar, but that's the best estimates that are available. It's one of the most dangerous occupations, and frequently high levels of trafficking and sexual assault are affiliated with this as well. And in the Mohawk Valley region, there are some agricultural workers, but there are also a lot of dairy farms. So I have both pictures on the slide here. And then another focus area for our clinic specifically is working with children and youth under the age of 21. There are a lot of
wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much. And well, like I said, if something changes, just keep me posted.
And there are increasing numbers of migrant children traveling to the US, coming across the border. The New York Times has recently been doing a number of studies and articles on migrant children entering the United States. So I have a few of those stats kind of pictured on the screen here. We have increasing numbers of children, often unaccompanied, coming across the border. And then the map here shows the areas where the children are ending up after they cross the border. So as you can see, it's a wide range of places, including a lot of rural areas like upstate New York as well. And then just briefly before I get into the specific work that we're doing as a clinic, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the categories of people in the US and kind of the immigration system to explain where we fit into this. So in general, the categories of people in the US fall broadly into citizens and non-citizens. And among non-citizens, those are comprised of immigrants, who are people who intend to stay in the US permanently and are permitted to apply for a green card, which gives them legal permanent residence and eventually citizenship. Non-immigrants are people who have no intent to stay permanently in the US and are authorized to be here temporarily. So that would include categories like visitors visas, for example. And then non-citizens can also be people who do not have status, people who either entered without authorization or who stayed longer than they were authorized to stay. So for people who want to apply for an immigrant visa, there are three general types that those can fall under: employment-based visas, family-based, and humanitarian. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize on this slide how few options there can be for some groups of people within these categories. So for employment-based visas, a lot of times these require certain levels of education or specific skills that are needed in order to qualify for these. For family-based visas, these generally require a close family member who is already in the US as a citizen or a legal permanent resident. So for a lot of the clients we're working with, they don't have the qualifications or the family members here already who could qualify them for these types of visas. So generally, we are working with humanitarian visas, which I put this in the next slide as well. So here I just wanted to give a quick overview of some of the types of humanitarian immigrant visas. And some of these I've mentioned our clinic works on specifically. So there are U visas, which are available for victims of certain types of crimes in the US. T visas, which are available for victims of human trafficking. VAWA, which stands for the Violence Against Women Act, which is for survivors of abuse by US citizens or legal permanent resident and family members. Asylum, which I'm sure everyone's heard about, which is available for survivors of persecution or people with a fear of persecution based on certain criteria. And then SIJ visas, which stands for Special Immigrant Juvenile Visas, which is for minors who've been abused, neglected, or abandoned by a parent. And as I mentioned, this is a focus of our clinic, so I'll explain a little bit more about that process as well. I just wanted to pause for a minute to see if anyone has any questions kind of about this overview before I continue into any more details. Great. Well, so I will focus today just briefly on talking about special immigrant juvenile status, which, as I mentioned, is the focus of most of our clinic's work. So special immigrant juvenile status, or SIJ, is a pathway to legal permanent residence and citizenship for children and unmarried youth who are under the age of 21. And they qualify for this status by being able to show that they have been abandoned, abused, or neglected by one or both parents in their home country, and that it is not in their best interest to return to their home country. So the process for this visa actually begins in the state court system, going to a state juvenile court and receiving orders from the judge there that they qualify for this status. Once they have these orders from the juvenile court judge, then they can apply with the federal government for a visa. At this point, there's a very long backlog for visas, so this puts them on a waiting list until a visa is available. Once a visa is available, then they're eligible to apply for legal permanent residency and then eventually for citizenship. So as I mentioned, the first part is the juvenile court petition. So our clinic works primarily on this part of the process, going with the child to a juvenile court and petitioning for these orders. Usually we do that as part of a guardianship process. So we're petitioning for a guardian in the US to be appointed for the minor, and then as part of that process, asking the judge to issue the order called a special findings order that the minor meets the requirements for special immigrant juvenile status. And then once we have these orders, then we help the minor apply with the federal government for what's called the I-360 visa application. And the deadline for all of this to be completed is the 21st birthday of the minor. After they turn 21, they age out of eligibility for the status. So frequently we're kind of up against the clock to complete these in time before the minor turns 21. And then, as I mentioned, right now there's a substantial backlog in this category for visas. So right now there are over 100,000 special immigrant juveniles who have gone through those steps, have been approved for a visa, but are waiting for one to become available. Right now, there's a policy that allows them to have some protection from deportation and to apply for work authorization during that time, but we're expecting that that may change with the new administration. Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight a few ways in general that community members can be helping during this time with the populations we're working with. So one thing I wanted to highlight just in general is raising awareness of the general presence and needs of vulnerable migrant populations in our communities, as I think that's something that's often not discussed, especially in more rural areas. But of course, as part of that, to avoid sharing any potentially identifying information about anyone in a public setting. Also encouraging and facilitating people with immigration needs to connect with local legal service providers. And I have linked a map here that I can also put in the chat that shows legal service providers by county in upstate New York. And then also some other potential volunteer opportunities, and I'd be happy to talk more about as well, are helping with transportation needs, interpreting, serving as potentially as guardians for SIDGE youth, and also participating in pro se asylum workshops. And so I've provided my contact information here, my email, phone number, and WhatsApp line, which is usually what we give out to potential clients. Right now, our office is at capacity for clients, but we can certainly help try to connect people to other legal service providers as well. So please feel free to give out my information to anyone with legal service needs. And so that was the end of my slides, kind of just a general overview of the project, and I'm happy to talk more about any of those areas or answer any questions people might have.
I just have a question about how, does it matter how long these immigrants, juveniles have been already here before, I mean, besides the aging out at 21, but if they've been here for several years, can they still find you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So for asylum, there is generally a 1-year deadline for once persons enter the country, they need to apply for asylum within that 1 year. For SIDGE, there is not any deadline in terms of how long they've been here, and their presence for any number of years does not count against them in that process. So the only deadline is that they need to be through this process before they turn 21, but they can have been here for basically their entire lives before that. They're still eligible to apply for SIDGE.
Do you have a typical case that you could just describe generally what happens when someone comes to you?
Sure. And by that, do you mean kind of how we walk them through the process of applying?
Yeah, what happens if somebody does come?
Sure. Yeah, so usually when we're connected with someone, we try to do kind of meet with them in person the first time to kind of build that relationship and build that trust, because I think that's what we find with a lot of the clients we're connected with is they're understandably very concerned about opening up to people. And this process involves them having to open up about some really personal things from their past. So a big part of like what we do at the beginning is trying to establish that relationship, kind of build that connection. So we usually try to do an in-person meeting just to kind of start that process. And then there's a lot of fact finding, gathering information about what they've been through in their home country, the things that would lead them to be qualified for SIDGE that we need to gather. So usually there's a number of follow-up calls or in-person meetings that we have after that to kind of gather all the information we need. And then we start putting together the forms for the juvenile court, which include forms that are put together by the court. And then we usually also include an affidavit that's a longer narrative of the story of the client that they've shared with us. That process can take a few months to kind of compile all that and put together the forms. And then we file it with the juvenile court. And then there's usually a waiting period until the juvenile court schedules a hearing. And then we'll go with the minor to the hearing, hopefully receive the signed orders from the judge at that point. And then we put together the federal application, which is usually processed within about 6 months after we submit that.
I'm
Six months' time-
curious,
In that 6 months' time, can they continue to work or whatever they're doing? Or are they
So-
limited?
So at this point, currently, as soon as they have been approved for a SIDGE visa, they're receiving the ability to apply for work authorizations. That would happen after the 6 months period when their application is approved. They'll still be on a backlog waiting for the visa to become available, but right now they can apply for work authorization. But that's a policy that we think potentially might be changing in the next year. Without that policy in place, they're not eligible for work authorization until they become eligible to apply for legal permanent residency, which is a few years down the line at this point.
Wow.
you had mentioned that part of the process is applying for guardianship in the state courts, juvenile courts, family courts. I'm curious about who the guardians are. Are they family members? Are they other persons? How are those relationships made?
So generally, if the child is here with one parent who they have a good relationship with, usually we're using that parent as a guardian. In a lot of cases, if the clients we're working with, that may be the mother who they have come to the US with. They've had issues in the past with the father who's still in the home country, so we apply for the mother to be appointed guardian. Other times they're coming here to live with an older sibling or a cousin, an aunt, an uncle. So if there's a family member in the picture who they have a good relationship with, we usually have that person apply to be guardian. Sometimes they're here without family, in which case we're usually trying to find someone else who can be kind of a mentor figure for them, whether that's a tutor, a friend who they're, have a good relationship with, or sometimes we've even used a community member who's volunteered to kind of build that relationship, be there as a mentor, and then serve as the legal guardian for this process.
And are there a lot of kids, I say kids, under 21 in your catchment area? What's a number about that don't have a family member, that are just not connected to anyone?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really hard to get exact numbers about any of this since it tends to be very kind of under the radar, and we're just seeing, the people who are connected with us through somebody they know. I would say in terms of percentage of clients that have not been with like a family member, I'd say roughly maybe a quarter of the clients we work with have really been pretty isolated and not been with a close family member that we've been able to apply for guardianship. So those have been cases where we're usually trying to connect them with a community member or someone else that they have connections with.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
It is.
my concern was how do they survive?
Yeah.
Who takes care of them?
Yeah, so generally, so one thing I do want to clarify is, when I said they're not eligible to apply for work authorization, that is for work authorization to be working legally with authorization. Most of the clients that we're coming in contact with, unless they are with family who is supporting them, they usually are working, but it'll be without papers or documents that gives them the protection to be doing so. So usually they are working to support themselves, usually on farms. That's the majority of the people we're working with. If they are here with family members, sometimes the family member is working to support them, which allows them to still be in school. But it really varies on the client and their family situation.
How are you finding clients? Are you doing active outreach with farmers, or how are they finding you?
So we've done some outreach in the area. We're hoping to do some more over the next year, going directly to farms. It's one of our goals. We're partnering with some other organizations to be able to do that. We've also been working with, there's a migrant education program, which does tutoring, state-funded tutoring program. And they don't do legal services themselves, but they are, going onto farms for tutoring purposes, and then can send us referrals of people they think may be in need of legal services. And then we also have the Cornell Farmworker program, which is through Cornell University, not through the law school, which again provides other services to farm workers, also tends to refer us cases in our county regions where they see a need for legal services.
Tasha, what do you see as roles for the congregations that we're part of? You said your office is in what, First Baptist Church, and what does that congregation know or do to support your work?
Yeah, so they've been involved in providing the space and contributing to funding for this project to be possible. But we've also, wanted to really be involved in the community with us. So we've done a number of kind of presentations to church communities in Cooperstown to kind of raise community awareness, because I think that's been a big focus of the project is not only reaching clients, but also just raising awareness in communities that these populations exist. I guess I think that's really the starting point, that a lot of people are not aware of the numbers of migrant farm workers in the area, and that includes many minors under the age of 21. Kind of just raising awareness, starting discussions about solutions for these issues. And we're also hoping to start working on kind of doing some more volunteer projects for people who are not lawyers, can help with doing some of the preparatory work that doesn't need to be done by a lawyer, that is important for these forms and these processes. So we've been working on kind of developing materials to hopefully do some work with both SIDG and with Asylum for ways that people can volunteer to help fill out some forms and do some of the preparatory fact gathering and things that can help increase the number of people we're able to reach out to in these communities.
I was surprised if I read your map correctly, and I may not be, but it appeared to me that you don't have clients in Otsego County or neighboring Delaware County, which I found surprising for an organization based in Otsego.
No, Otsego and Delaware are both counties that we're planning to be reaching within the next year. Right now, our capacity to take cases is, we're starting out, it's just me in the Cooperstown office right now. So we're only able to take a certain number of cases. So we do have some people on the wait list that are going to be, eventually our goal is to make sure we have cases in each of the 8 counties that we've identified as target counties. And we certainly have had people reaching out from Otsego and from Delaware as well. So the map only showed cases that we currently have open at this point or have already completed. So we also have a wait list of cases that we're going to be adding soon that will be covering those counties as well. But I do think one of the challenges when we first started the project was just getting the word out that we were here, and that that there were legal options available in this area. So there was kind of I think the first year of the project was a lot of kind of building those relationships, starting to build like the referral network to start receiving clients reaching out to us. But that has been happening over the last years. So we're hoping to have a continued presence in these counties.
So you said that a congregation can do things like get the word out. You, I'm guessing, would speak to interested people like you are with us today. And then you would also be able to help, let's say, any interested people, with any of the fact gathering prep work that a non-lawyer just could do, those kinds of things.
Yes. And just a couple other things I was going to mention in terms of like volunteer opportunities that we've had people volunteer with before. Also, I mentioned, sometimes we need a community person to step in as a guardian for a case. So I kind of try to maintain, in Ithaca, we had built up kind of a list of people who had expressed interest in potentially being a guardian if a case arose. And so then we had a list of people we could draw on an email when a case arose where we needed someone to step in. So, people who are interested in being part of the guardianship process, could be on a list or something like that. And then we also often have transportation needs with clients. So often they are without their own form of transportation and don't have many people that they can contact who can help them get to our office, to, a immigration court hearing, different things like that for the process as well. So definitely people who are able to volunteer with transportation could be very helpful. And then anyone who has ability to speak another language, we always need interpreters as well, particularly in Spanish with most of the clients we're working with, but sometimes other languages as well.
Okay. Thank you.
What about financial support?
Yes, we do sometimes have specific needs that come up with a client. Recently, we had a client who had a crack in their windshield on their car. And we were concerned that they were still in the process of applying for SIJ, and we were concerned that that could be an issue if they were pulled over at a traffic stop when they didn't have any legal papers at this point. So we did kind of reach out to some people for some fundraising for that issue. So there are times when we have like a specific issue come up with a client where there's a need kind of connected to their legal representation as well.
Tasha, what's the mood in the community, in the immigrant community right now? How is it now? How was it in comparison to when you first, when your office first started?
I think we definitely have a lot more people concerned, worried about what the next couple of years are going to look like for them. We've definitely had a lot more people reach out on our intake line. I can say, we've before the past couple of months, we've gone, it could go multiple weeks at a time without having anyone reach out on the intake line. And the past couple of months, it's been pretty much every day someone's been reaching out. And a lot of people just really concerned, I think, about a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's, the hardest thing, I think, is people just not really sure what to expect or how to prepare with their cases. So it's, I think, the biggest kind of emotional feel that I've been getting from clients right now.
I was just in another meeting, and one of the topics for discussion was anticipation that after January 20th, there may be expedited deportations. Is that a fear you have as well? And to piggyback on the last question, is that kind of fear present in the clients that you're working with?
Yes, I would say there's definitely a lot more fear. We are concerned that, a lot of the removal process right now, there's a lot of room for discretion with a lot of things in terms of how judges are, willing to give clients more time before they would issue an order of deportation, and how ICE is responding to situations. And we are concerned that that could change drastically with the new administration over the next year. So I think as much as possible, we're just trying to move through, we're trying to move through any applications that we can get in before January. We're trying to move those through. And also focus on trying to close any cases we can in immigration court, because judges do have discretion to to close a case, usually we ask them to close the case once the client has an approved visa application, but I know a lot of colleagues in the area have been moving forward to try to close cases even earlier, to say, this is a person who's going to be applying for a visa application, and we'd like to move to have this closed ahead of time. So just trying to move forward and get closure anywhere we can, I think has been our strategy right now.
What about harboring, Tasha? Is there been any conversation between your colleagues about what harboring would look like if it's done on the farm, or it's done in a church or some other place? Do you have any insight on what that looks like and the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, and we've been talking about trying to do some kind of putting together a paper, or just a short piece about the role of churches specifically, and providing like sanctuary and how that would work with harboring. We haven't fully completed that yet, but I could definitely be sending that to people if anyone is interested in having that as a resource for congregations. We're hoping to just do a short piece that kind of touches on current law on that, and then how that might change for the next administration.
I think I've sensed some interest just in a couple of conversations I've had, but
I'd be happy to send that around if there's a.
Is that paper available now, Tasha?
No, it's something we're hoping to write over the next few weeks. But I can certainly, if there's an email list I could send things to.
Send it to me and I'll make sure the group gets it.
Great.
well, what is it in legalese, just generally? I mean, harboring is a serious thing, right? I mean, just generally.
Generally, yes. There are, and it's not an area that I know a huge amount about before this, so I wouldn't want to say anything specifically without that. But yeah, I mean, I know there are policies in place with sanctuaries that would be important to look into.
Well, thanks. I think we just put more work on your plate, and you already
No,
have.
no, it is something we were hoping to put together a piece on. So I'm sorry I don't have a more detailed answer, but I certainly can provide some more information in the next few weeks about that as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Tasha, thank you. This is an important issue for everyone, and we need to stay as informed as we possibly can.
Can we
Thank you
get
very much.
can we have a copy of the slides?
And just send that to me.
Yes.
I'll distribute it.
Yes, I'll send it.
Yeah, because I think, well, I think it was an excellent presentation, but I think there's some nice concrete numbers kind of a thing on there instead of people hand waving and saying stuff that, are very pointed and helpful, I think, in having dialogue and discussion with people.
Yeah, I'm happy to send slides. And my email's on there, so if anyone has any follow-up questions or comments they'd like to share as well, I'd be happy to respond to those as well.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's close with a prayer from the Book of Common Worship. For refugees and migrants, O holy God, as you have accompanied your people through times of captivity, wilderness, and exile, shelter and sustain all those who flee persecution, oppression, warfare, violence, hunger, and poverty. Open our hearts and homes, our gates and our doors, so that they might find safety, peace, and welcome, a place to live in freedom without fear. Through Jesus Christ, the hope of the world, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, friends, the Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Bye now.